Houston, we have a problem. What's going on, everybody? Alex here, and today we're looking at a potential James Harden trade. He wants out of Houston, he's disgruntled, and there's not much the Rockets can do to keep it at this point. So let's look at a trade scenario that I believe makes sense for all parties. So before we get into the details of the trade, let's talk about what Harden has done in Houston to this point. The Rockets were able to acquire Harden via trade in 2012 for pennies on the dollar because the Thunder didn't want to pay the luxury tax money required to extend him. The next offseason, Houston would sign star center Dwight Howard in order to try to build a contender around Harden. But Harden and Howard quickly proved incompatible together, as in 2016, each player reportedly requested that general manager Daryl Morey trade the other. Neither player would be traded, however, and in the 2016 offseason, Howard rejected his player option and departed in free agency. The Rockets' pursuit of a contender resumed in 2017 when they traded a large package of role players and picks for Chris Paul from the Los Angeles Clippers. Even though Harden and Paul were able to get to a Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals against the mighty Warriors, Harden reportedly did not enjoy playing with Paul. So, in the 2019 offseason, the Rockets would trade Paul 2 first-round picks and 2 first-round pick swaps to the Oklahoma City Thunder for Harden's friend and former teammate, Russell Westbrook. But then, after just 1 year and a second-round playoff exit, both Harden and Westbrook reportedly asked the Rockets to trade them as they did not believe they were a good fit playing together. And after the Rockets traded Westbrook to the Washington Wizards for John Wall and a first-round pick, Harden still reportedly wants out. So now that the Rockets have tried to pair Harden with 3 different superstars, and he's decided he didn't want to play with any of them, there's almost nothing the Rockets can do to keep Harden happy in Houston. Even though Harden still has 2 years left on his contract in Houston, there are many avenues by which he can pursue a trade. He's already missed 2 Rockets preseason games, and when he finally showed up, he appeared out of shape. The Rockets must understand that until they trade him, Harden can continue to be unprofessional and corrosive to the team's culture. Since players of Harden's caliber are rarely available via trade, there will be many teams chomping at the bit to acquire him. Even though Harden has apparently stated that his preferred destination is Brooklyn, other teams may still try to trade for him because he's such a valuable piece that could put their team over the top. However, since we've seen Harden fail to cooperate with 3 other superstars in Houston, other teams that trade for him would be running a huge risk that he doesn't like playing with their stars and leaves 2 years later in free agency. So for this trade scenario, we're going to deal Harden to the Nets, because that team, with Harden paired with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in Brooklyn, appears too talented to fail. The Nets own all of their own first-round picks and have talented young players such as Spencer Dinwiddie, Karis LeVert, and Jarrett Allen, so they may have the assets to trade for Harden straight up. The problem with this from Houston's side, though, is that a team centered around Dinwiddie, LeVert, and John Wall probably isn't good enough to make the Western Conference playoffs, but probably isn't bad enough to get high draft picks. In addition, Dinwiddie, LeVert, and Wall probably aren't a good fit together because they're all guards who need the ball in their hands. I believe that if Houston's going to trade Harden, they need to tear it all down, start from scratch, and rebuild the long way. If this is Houston's goal, Dinwiddie, LeVert, and Allen don't help them accomplish this, so they need to be shipped to a third team. Enter the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers have been an excellent team the past few seasons, especially on defense, as they finished 5th in defensive efficiency last season. However, their offense hasn't been able to keep up, as they ranked 18th in offensive efficiency last season and got swept in the first round of the playoffs by the Heat. Victor Oladipo did not look the same last season after returning from a ruptured quad tendon. But even if he does return to his old form, the Pacers could use more guards that can get their own shot. Dinwiddie and LeVert can help with that, as they shouldered the main load of the Brooklyn offense while Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were injured last season. Jarrett Allen is also an excellent rim protector who could pair well with the Pacers' elite offensive big man, Domantas Sabonis. So if the Pacers were to get Dinwiddie, Allen, and LeVert, they would need to give Houston more draft picks and young players in addition to what Brooklyn already gives them. So here's the final version of the trade. The Nets get Harden, the Pacers get Dinwiddie, LeVert, and Allen, and the Rockets get young players Rodions Kurucs from the Nets, Goga Batadze and Jalen LeCue from the Pacers, in addition to 2 first-round picks from the Nets and a first-rounder and a second-rounder from the Pacers. Jeremy Lamb, Doug McDermott, and TJ McConnell would also have to go from the Pacers to the Rockets to make the salaries match, and so Houston doesn't acquire too much long-term salary. For the Nets, the benefit of this trade is obvious. You're creating the most talented team in the NBA right now. The fit here isn't great because Kyrie Irving and James Harden both demand the ball in their hands a ton, but Kevin Durant proved in Golden State that he can play well off the ball. The Nets wouldn't necessarily be the favorite to win the NBA championship because the Lakers are also extremely talented and they appear to fit together better than these Nets would. But the Nets would be heavy favorites to advance to the finals out of the Eastern Conference because of their incredible talent. So here's the Nets depth chart after the trade. They would be a little bit thin at point guard and power forward, and they may want to add someone via trade or off of the waivers if they can, but this team is extremely talented. As for the Pacers, I believe that by bolstering their offense with this trade, they would become arguably the 3rd best team in the Eastern Conference, considering that their defense is already at an elite level. The loss of Doug McDermott would definitely leave them a little bit thin at power forward, but they're getting huge upgrades in the backcourt and at center, so this shouldn't be a problem. Finally, for the Rockets, as I mentioned earlier, this team would immediately go into a rebuild by acquiring mostly young players and picks in this trade. McDermott and McConnell could possibly be waived because the Rockets don't have enough roster spots for the incoming players, and those two, Lamb, Tucker, Cousins, and McLemore, could all be trade candidates now or at the trade deadline. The other advantage of this trade for the Rockets is that it creates cap space for them now and down the road, which could help their rebuilding process because they can use that cap space to take on bad contracts from other teams in exchange for more draft picks. At the very least, this trade should be good for John Wall because it puts the ball exclusively in his hands and leaves key role players in Eric Gordon and Christian Wood around him. So there it is. This trade would represent an enormous shift in the balance of power around the NBA. So let me know what you guys thought of it in the comments section, and if you had any different ideas on where the Rockets should trade James Harden. If you guys like this video, please drop a like. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And if you want more content like this, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a video. I highly recommend it. We're making more and more great basketball content, so don't miss out. Other than that, peace out, guys, and have a wonderful rest of your day.